Welcome to another episode of Meet the Client with ProZ Pro Bono. And today I'm very excited to meet with Kari Rossetti, who comes from a project called the Neighborhood Resilience Project based in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, who do great work among their local community. So welcome, Kari. Nice to see you again. Okay, now why don't you tell us a little bit, first of all, about the kind of work that you do? Who are the people that you're setting out to help? What kind of problems do you have, and what solutions do you bring to those problems?
Sure. So I am the clinic administrator for the Free Health Center at an organization called the Neighborhood Resilience Project. So the mission of the Neighborhood Resilience Project is that we are rooted in the faith of the Orthodox Christian faith. We're rooted in those beliefs. We are inspired by the civil rights movement. So we're talking about American history in the 50s and 60s. And our goal is to support the transformation of communities. Really communities that are disproportionately affected by trauma. So our goal is to support the transformation of those trauma-affected communities to become healing, healthy, and resilient neighborhoods and communities. So we do that in a number of different ways. I really think that one of the things that we do well is we're trying to affect those communities holistically. So first we talk about, how do we engage with the community? So that's things like basic necessities, like food and clothing and a warm space, a cup of coffee. So we do that. We have a food pantry and a clothing pantry. We do a backpack feeding program. So as you may know, food insecurity can be a real challenge, especially for children. So when they're in school, they have food, but they go home for the weekend and then don't have those resources. So we're able to provide about 1,200 lunches weekly. We drop them off to different schools. We do community events, so there usually are twice a day. There's resources, so there can be like group therapy or things like bingo or movie night. So to engage the our local community here. We are located in the Hill District of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which, if you know, I know you might not know Pittsburgh, but this is an area of the city that is known for lower socioeconomic conditions. And so we do that. So we're looking to engage our community. The next part, and like where our programs lies, we're looking for ways to engage the community so that we can offer opportunities for healing. So we know that if you've experienced trauma, especially if you have experienced trauma in childhood, we know that you're just more likely to experience many challenges as an adult, and they can be with your health. You're more likely to experience comorbidities such as diabetes and cardiovascular issues earlier in life. We talk often about how there's a death gap. And so, your life expectancy can be changed, can be decades lower depending on the zip code that you live in. And you can literally be living next to, another zip code where the life expectancy is 15 to 20 years greater. And so how do we engage in healing for our physical health? So like I said, I am the clinic administrator for the Free Health Center, where we are able to offer free medical and dental care for those who are uninsured. So again, we're looking at ways for healing. So other programs, we have a trauma response team. So we have, if you are familiar with like RV campers, and so they actually go out to communities who have experienced homicide through gun violence, and they're able to provide a therapeutic interaction. They're able to connect people to resources. Again, looking for therapeutic interactions or basic needs for the community. Do you need a cup of coffee? Do you need a safe place? Because emotions are high, like how can we administer to any of those needs? And so we do that, and then we have community health workers. So we have community health deputies that go out. They promote health and wellness resources out in the community. They work with organizations. They put on vaccination clinics. We do micro community interventions. So we're looking to work with communities who want to work with us, of course, right? But we actually work with those community members block by block over a long period of time, and we're able to do a health assessment to say, look at their spiritual health, their economic health, their physical health, and then to kind of work with them for over a period of months to see those outcomes, those things hopefully improve. So those are a couple of the things that we do here, and how we all work together. And the key really is like we want to look for these opportunities to engage with our local community. We want to look for those opportunities in which healing encounters can happen, and then we want to empower those communities to be able to sustain, hopefully, the healthy change that has occurred. And so those are things that we look forward to. Is it's not just putting band-aids on things; it's really empowering folks to sustain healthy change, because we hope, right? We have hope, and we have hope that things can be better.
Sounds like a very wide range and a very useful set of services that you offer. At the beginning, you mentioned communities that have suffered from trauma as opposed to individuals, with, let's say, abuse in a single family. Can you define what you mean by a community that suffered trauma? And you pointed to the civil rights movement as well. So can you just unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, we're located in a community that has experienced those traumas, and so sort of by definition, I think that's the community that we are engaged with, that we're working towards, and so we understand that communities, especially communities who have experienced disproportionate levels of trauma,
So by
that they
trauma,
need those.
you mean racism or social disadvantage or food poverty or all those kind of things
Yeah,
together?
I do.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. All of the things, and you know how people engage or identify with their trauma. Like, I think sometimes we're not even aware of the trauma or the effects of decades or generational trauma that we're currently living in. And so I think as an organization, we recognize the umbrella of those things, but we're interacting with individuals, and so how we encounter, how they engage with their trauma, how we engage with their trauma, then can all look like different things, right? But I think the key is being aware of those things, being aware that we are by definition engaging with communities living who have experienced those higher levels of trauma. Then we can work on finding some solutions and identifying some needs to help them.
And tell us a little bit then about the collaboration you've had with us, because you were one of our first uh, partners, clients in our translation service, where we offer free translations to nonprofits around the world. What was the need for translation, and how did it work out for you?
Yeah, that's so funny. I didn't realize we were one of the first. So that's exciting for us to know. It's so again, I'm part of the Free Health Center, where we are serving the medical and dental needs of those who are uninsured, which is different than those who are underinsured. And so, you'll find in the United States that every free clinic works a little bit differently. But it's just an important distinction to know as part of the conversation for us. So because we are seeing the uninsured, we often run into our demographic of patients are those who are immigrants or refugees. From different places. And so when I walked into this role, about a year and a half ago, one of the first needs was, what do we do about translation? And as you know, I've been a nurse for 20 years, and, working in there, it's like these clunky, telephones, and these, it's just having the access and like the personal interaction. And so I was sort of like, well, what are the opportunities now in 2023? And, at that time, and just like, what is affordable for us? Obviously, we're a nonprofit organization. So the utilization of resources and how we allocate those funds, it just impacts the number of people we can see, right? And so, because we want to provide medicine and we want to provide labs and the things that they need. So to spend any dollars elsewhere means sort of less of that. And so, yeah, so we're so thankful for this resource, right? Because it adds a layer of security for our patients and our providers, that we can communicate, right? So we talk about trauma-informed community development as part of the organization, but what happens in the Free Health Center is that we're looking at trauma-informed medical care. And what does it mean to be trauma-informed, and how do you do that, right? For us, that means that for example, our patient visits are 60 minutes long, and our doctors and our nurses, everyone's a volunteer. And so why do we do that? So there are two reasons. Is first, we want to give our volunteers the resources and the capacity to be able to deliver the medical care that the patient needs. But also conversely, how does the patient, giving the patient time to establish a relationship with someone new, and then if that person who is brand new you can't communicate with them, like then how do you establish things that are important, like trust, or a correct medical history, or really understanding some of the complexities of the trauma that they likely left having to flee their native country. So for us, just to be able to do it in a HIPAA compliant way, that we're able to build that connection, as needed. So, in any medical office, you kind of never know what's going to walk through the door, but just to say like, oh, we can provide this need for this need. And the other way that we've been able to connect and has been really helpful for our organization is translation. So of course there are like the paperwork side, which nobody likes, but it's all very necessary. So like our consent forms and our just, how we function. Again, how can we communicate these things that are very important to the people that we're, engaging with and hopefully trying to help.
Sure. And language, as you say, can be a real barrier between people who are already traumatized, whether or not they come from a traumatic situation right now, like a war zone or anything, but people who come from a life trauma. And I guess language is just one extra block in their path. And by removing that, we're enabling you to get together directly with the client and actually do what you set out to do. I'm very glad we're able to help you with this. And I wanted to thank you for making the time to talk to us and explain something about the impact, because that's also useful for our community to find out how the work that they're doing voluntarily is reaching real people in real situations. So thank you again, Kari.
It's very hard to communicate like how valuable this resource is.